So my question is to Ms. Diplock, and I really enjoyed what you were presenting, and I completely agree with the entire thrust of what you were saying, and I share the intuition that these issues of short-termism do cause systemic risk. And indeed, one could look, of course, to the financial crisis as being entirely precipitated by short-termism within the banks, within not just the banks in the US, but also the way that the mortgages were repackaged and sold on in these complicated financial instruments that people never bother to explain. They simply say they're complicated. They aren't actually as complicated as people make out, but there was an irresponsibility of the financial services system, a lack of sustainability, if you like, within banks and the underlying system. So we already have proof, at least, that issue, poor governance of the financial services sector, has caused clearly systemic risk. We also have various studies that look at the sustainable development conundrum of climate change. For example, most famously, at least in the UK, Lord Stern's review of the economics of climate change, which concluded a few years ago, but said very clearly, and has still not been challenged by a better report, in my view, that by 2050, 20% of our global GDP would be harmed, would be reduced.
Your question?
My question is, if we have, sorry Gary, if there is so, I've done a lot of work on this, so I'm very, very passionate about the topic, and I'm sure that's shared by a number of other people here, so I will shut up soon. But my question is, if the short-termism problem has already been studied at the micro level within companies, I think that's been proven, and the short-termism issue caused the financial crisis, and we also have other research on other sustainability issues that suggests that we have future crunches coming from, for example, climate change. What is the nature of the research that we are missing that would prove that the short-termism problems cause systemic risks? I thought that had been proven.
Well, just let me say that part of my secret plan as to why we should have some data and research on this is that I believe that we need more political will about the confluence of global warming and global finance, if you want to put it in a nutshell. And part of what you say relies on perception and anecdote, and part of it relies on, if you like, detailed analysis. And I think that we probably need to engage the Financial Stability Board and the G20 in a complete understanding of how all of the pieces that you outlined fit together. And the way in which that would be best achieved, I think, is by an integrated research project that pulled those pieces of the puzzle together and then explained it in virtually 5 pages that can be put before politicians and others and say, this is the answer to everything, frankly. If you're asking a question about financial stability, just let us give you this document underpinned by very clear analysis, which is highly respected and which is very, very detailed, and which does not rely on our intuition or our anecdote or other things, and which is not limited. And can I make this very important point? At the moment, we have silos of research and thinking. We have the environmentalists doing a whole lot. The Stern report, important, very important. We have people doing work on systemic risk in markets, vital and very important. We have other silos in governance. We have silos in social responsibility. What we don't have, to my mind, is the pulling together of those threads, the tapestry. I'm sorry, we've got someone down here who's... No, sorry, would you like to contradict me? Because I'm happy to be contradicted.
Just waiting for the next question.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'll wind up. Thank you very much. But we don't have that tapestry put together in a picture which politicians can see and say, aha, now I get it. Now I understand why we need to address this in a way which will engage our regulatory community, our stock exchange community, and everyone in a common mindset about what I call the confluence of global warming and global capital?
Jane, great. If I just may add here, politicians, and I'm saying this at some risks, are also not always long-term oriented. And the question, why are human beings not rational, is a very difficult one. Because the climate evidence at its core has never been challenged, and yet we are not rationally responding to it. Why is that so? Why are we not building, and so forth? But these are the core questions, and I think you're really up to a phenomenal thing: systemic risk assessment of non-financial issues, and how to change the risk paradigm on risk assessment. Paul Clemens-Hunt, I should have mentioned UNEP FI, an integral friend and a critical player in this entire field.
Paul, can you speak up, or? I think for the translator I should take the mic.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question. With the quiet technical part and all of this UNEP FI. Thank you, Georg. Just very briefly on Jane's point and Steve's point, I think in terms of the political engagement around financial stability and systemic risk, surely with the G20 you're pushing on an half-open door. In the Canadian G20 meeting in Canada, they specifically link financial system stability and resilience to sustainable growth, and they link it into environmental issues. Now, we all know the Financial Stability Board, the Basel people, they've been running full out to save the system for the last 2 years. Perhaps the patient is coming out of intensive care, but it's critical that in the next period that the link between sustainability and systemic risk is pushed. But for the stock exchanges, my question is this. In a piece of work UNEP FI is just completing on financial stability and systemic risk, there are parts of the investment chain and financial intermediation, over-the-counter markets, high-frequency trading, and some of the stock exchanges depend upon that volume of trading for your business model. We cannot make the link between sustainability and these arcane parts of the market where there are huge conflicts of interest. So my question for the stock exchanges is, how do you even begin to configure the argument linking sustainability to OTC, to high-frequency trading, to co-location of the service close to the market so people can trade? These are immensely complex issues. Our conclusion in parts of our research was that we simply need more research, because there is complexity there. But you're all dealing with conflicts of interest, which I think need some, the oxygen of publicity, and they need to be looked at.
Thank you, Paul. Can I pass on to Hussein very quickly? Is this the basic dilemma, short-term, long-term?
It's a basic dilemma, but it's a chicken and egg situation. Without companies, you could not even have high-frequency trading or co-location or any other high-volume businesses. We first have to go back to the basics, go for public offerings, convince the companies to go public. A lot of the large exchanges have given up on that. A lot of the exchanges are just concentrating on high volumes of trading and not the basics. We concentrate on the basics. We go to the companies. We've done a huge national campaign on IPOs. We're working with all the institutions in the country in order to attract the companies to the markets. We as national exchanges don't have the luxury of just concentrating on sustainability, but we can create segmentations. What we are doing is we're creating a market segment, we're creating a new index, and we're providing incentives to companies, such as discount on listing fees. That is the only way that we can deal with these issues, but our major concern is public offerings. Go back to the basics and convince the companies on sustainability.
Thank you, Hussein. I think that's a very strong answer. We have 10 minutes more.
Okay, just very quickly.
State your name.
Lee Watson, one of the founders of XBRL, which is the information standard that allows information to be discoverable. But my question is to Marvin King. First of all, reporting for reporting's sake. This whole trend in the marketplace that there is a huge cost associated for companies to be in compliance. Unless there is one global framework that companies can really hang their hat on, the reporting
so that it can be comparable in the marketplace and useful to the investors. And my question goes to Marvin King, Mr. Marvin King. Who should be the custodian of that global framework, and how do we get it implemented into the marketplace? Thank you.
The custodian should be the stakeholders of the company. Because when you think about it, the ultimate regulator and the ultimate compliance officer of a company is in fact its stakeholders. It's not the compliance officer and it's not the regulator. Stakeholders, if they're not happy with the way a company is reporting or the way a company is interacting with the various stakeholder groupings, I think BP is a wonderful example. You've got reactive strategic communication rather than interactive. If it had been interactive, they might not be in the crisis they're in at the moment. So I think the answer, Lee, is the question of stakeholder groupings, the identification of that and interaction between the company and those stakeholder groupings. Some of the great companies in the world have now got CSROs, and I know you're all thinking of corporate social responsibility officers. These are corporate stakeholder relationship officers. They sit outside the executive suite. They're not even in the building with the other executives. They talk to the external stakeholders and relate what their needs and expectations and interests are back into management. They build it into the fabric of how they manage it, feed it up to the board, and the board then tweaks the strategy. So I come back to how I started the answer to your question, stakeholders.
But who is the global framework that they
Well,
should...
the global framework, of course, as the chairman of GRI, I'm going to say that GRI framework. And it's not because I'm the chairman of GRI, Lee, it's that it is now generally accepted as the #1 standard setter on ESG reporting.
Thank you, Marvin. I want to back you up on this. We're also betting on GRI. It's 10 years of hard work and great progress. I think we have space for 1 or 2 very quick questions, but we have to be very pointed, please. The microphone to the front row, please. There are so many questions now. Let's put the mic on a quick travel tour from the back here, but one question quickly each, please.
There's a very interesting public policy issue. Donald McDonald, British Telecom Pension Scheme and Chair of Principles for Responsible Investment. There's a very interesting public policy aspect to that turn of the discussion, and I'd be interested in the panel's views, because governments in the UK and elsewhere will tell us that long-term investment is very good for the world economy and it's responsible and sustainable and so on. But of course their revenues in terms of transactions in the stock exchanges have actually been cut post-crisis because of the volume of transactions in the London Stock Exchange has dropped quite dramatically, and apparently one estimate is that this year the volume of transactions will be 1.46 times the total market value. Now that's actually quite a substantial reduction, and it's estimated that the exchequer in the UK is going to lose £1 billion. So there appear to be disincentives for governments and regulators to actually look at long-termism and so on, and sustainability. And I was just wondering how the panel would address those public policy issues, because I think this is a very interesting area to get into.
Well, a very specific question. I think we want to collect a few of them and then give the panel a final round to reply to the specifics, to give as many as possible. Please, that's the mic travel. Oh, here it's in the front row, please.
If I may, Robert Craybill from Impact Investment Exchange in Singapore. I completely accept the relevance of ESG practices to long-term financial performance, and as well the risks of disregarding ESG on systemic financial risks. But I worry that we are also forgetting the moral and ethical aspect of environmental and social practices of companies, and also their effect on sustainable development. And while realizing that to make the case to investors, one must focus on long-term financial performance, and for a financial regulator, systemic risk is most important. at what level of the policy debate should we be addressing the impact on actual sustainable development in the real economy, not just in the